as we do after a win. And our players of the game from last week on offense, quarterback Greg Ward, on defense, linebacker Ephraim Oliphant, and on special teams Earl Foster. Scout players of the week on offense, freshman receiver Elton Dyer. On defense, Vincent Hall, senior walk-on, is doing a great job for us. Was their scout team player of the week and played on kickoff cover in the game against Memphis. Had a big time tackle there in the second half. And then scout special teams, coming off an injury from last season. Good to have him back, is senior defensive end John Witten. Just to recap a little bit from last week, proud of our young men in our program, our staff and coaches. Went on the road, 50,000 fans, a team that was in first place in our conference, and a very, very good football team in Memphis. And started slow, finished fast, and a couple things we talked about going into the game that we felt like were going to be extremely important helped us win the football game. Turnovers was one. We turned it over 3 times on offense, which is certainly way too many, but defensively we forced 5 on a Memphis team that in their first 5 games had only turned it over 5 times total. 2 of those 5 we forced within the last 2 minutes and 50 seconds of the game. So we won the turnover battle. We talked about field position. Field position was hit or miss. Again, I think they did a better job than we did on special teams in that game. I thought our kickoff return was not where it needs to be, put us in some tough positions offensively. But at the end of the game, we were punting from our own 28-yard line, and they have a very, very dangerous returner. Logan Piper hit a 49-yard punt, and Matthew Adams got down the field and tackled him at their own 28, which I thought was a critical play at the end of this football game. And then the third thing we talked about were penalties. And coming off the game against Central Florida, we had been penalized 12 times, and 8 of those 12 penalties were penalties that occurred prior to the snap or after the play ended. So there was a major point of emphasis for us last week going into the Memphis game. We had 3 penalties in the game, 2 holding calls and a block in the back on Lee Hightower's interception return. So reduced the number down to 3, and pre-snap penalties and post-play penalties were 0 against Memphis. So proud of the way our young men hung in there after being down 14 points and came back and really executed well in all 3 phases and did enough to win the game. Looking forward to Temple Friday night. Again, another short week, and a very talented, very well-coached, undefeated team in our conference coming to town. So this is, I was asked a question yesterday on our conference call to compare this year's Temple team to the one we played last year. I don't think it's a fair comparison for us, having played Temple in Game 2 last season. P.J. Walker, their quarterback, is a young man, and I mentioned this yesterday as well, that a lot of coaches in our league have been talking about now for a long time. Ended up becoming the starter at Temple last year as a true freshman, somewhere around halfway through the season, and is very dynamic, dual threat, can throw it, can run it, and is certainly doing a great job for them. Defensively, Phil Snows, their coordinator, has been doing it a long time, does a great job. The young men now are really understand, very comfortable in the scheme they're running. Tyler Matakevich is as good a defensive player as we'll face all season. And I want to say he led the NCAA in tackles, solo tackles last year as a sophomore. And, it's one of those deals when you put the film on, if you don't know where the ball is, just find number 8 for Temple, and he'll bring you to it because he's around it on every snap. So it'll be a great challenge for us. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record in that we feel like we've got to do on our end the things we feel like we need to do to be successful and to win a football game. And we'll be out there tonight in full pads for 2 hours, and tomorrow ends up being a Thursday for us, and we're 3 days away from kickoff. So on the injury front, it's been, I use the word devastating for our program to see young men like Daniel Spencer, Derek Matthews have their careers end this past week the way they did. Lee Hightower's a junior. He'll have surgery tomorrow and be out for the rest of the year. And, you know, it's as much as anything for this past week, we feel awful for the young men, what they mean to us, what they've done here in our program off the field and certainly on the field. So they'll be very much missed. Any questions?
Sure. We talked last week about Greg Ward, you know, his elusiveness, obviously the big TD run. Is that something you guys, you know, is he had the green light every play to do that, or is that something that just instinctually comes to him?
Both. You know, if again, going into last week's game, and he's done that in the limited roles prior to the Memphis game that we've had for him in terms of if either the protection breaks down or there's great coverage on a pass play or he sees a seam and he feels like he can get us positive yards, yes, he does have the green light. And, you know, that's what I talked about, the added dimension he brings because of his escapability, extending the play ability, if you will, and being a dual threat quarterback. We had some explosive plays in the pass game against Memphis where he broke contain or he started to scramble and a defender left one of our receivers uncovered and he was able to throw it to him. And then obviously we had plays where he broke container, he scrambled, and they covered the receivers, and he felt like he could run it, and he did that effectively. So, you know, I'd like to say, I mean, I'm not going to say that's by design. Again, we talk about it as a staff every day that some of our best run plays are going to be when we call a pass and he decides to run with the football. But we know and knew going in that he would bring that dimension to the quarterback position.
And then on the flip side of that, have you seen, you know, him develop more as a quarterback, as passing the ball? He seemed to be more on the same page with the receivers this game instead of, you know, obviously in the second half of the UCF game?
Well, and you know, again, when you talk about Greg Ward right now playing quarterback, he was a receiver all spring, all summer, and then rejoined the quarterback meetings at the beginning of August. So, you know, the more he plays, the more he's going to get comfortable with the wideouts, the more they're going to get comfortable with him. I think that's true for the offensive line. You know, you look at the Central Florida game, and we got a holding call or two on our offensive line where he started to leave the pocket, and they weren't necessarily used to that. So, again, I think the more he plays, the more comfortable his 10 teammates around him are going to be.
Defensively in the second half, you guys only give up 3 points. What were kind of some of those things you saw at halftime that said we have to get better at this and then execute?
Well, I think our field position was better, which helped us defensively. You know, I thought we settled down a little bit and tackled well, and it's something we talked about at halftime in that Memphis got a touchdown a couple minutes before half to break the 14-14 tie and give them momentum, give them a 7-point lead, and you know, just felt confident to where we've taken some pretty good shots from them at that point offensively, and you know, just had to settle down and play and tweak a couple things. At that point we had some new starters in the game, if you will. Landon Roberts playing middle linebacker at that point, and shuffling some guys in there. Matthew Adams got more extensive playing time at that point because of the loss of Derek Matthews. So, you know, just to settle our guys down, continue to keep the ball in front of us, not give up the big play, and then again, I think our guys did a great job forcing the turnovers that they did in the second half.
With Ward having started as a wide receiver, moved to quarterback, now you've lost Spencer, are you concerned about your depth at that position moving forward?
Well, you know, when concern's an out word I use a lot, and I'm not going to use it with answering this question. We've lost some depth at receiver. You know, you go back to last spring, Donald Gage is a young man we were counting on playing for us this year. He suffered a leg injury and had surgery last spring. Going into training camp, John Leday was a redshirt freshman that we were thinking was going to start for us at one of our receiver positions. He suffered a foot injury. He's out for the season. And now moving Greg to quarterback, you lose a starting receiver there, and then Daniel Spencer. So, you know, we felt like we had a lot of depth at the receiver position coming into this season, We still have depth. We certainly still have talent there. You know, I'd like to not stand up here next week or the week after and talk about losing another receiver to an injury. And, you know, going into the season, we felt like we were going to be able to rotate some guys, keep them fresh. And what you're seeing right now is our guys like Markeith Ambles and DeMarcus Ayers that either last year or earlier in the season were playing 30 and 40 snaps and rotate, now playing 75 snaps on offense. So, you know, that can take its toll over the course of a season. But again, we feel good about the depth we have at this point at receiver.
Coach, I know it's somewhat of a shorter week, only by just a day, but what kind of challenges does that give for the players and coaches?
Well, losing a day is probably more significant than people think in terms of, instead of going from a Saturday to Thursday, a Saturday to a Friday, is when you come back. You've got to watch the film of the game you just participated in as coaches. You'd like to show it to your student athletes to make corrections and to show them things they did well. And then you got to get on to your next opponent. So losing that day is probably more significant than people think, especially at this time of the year. You know, I think last year we had some shorter weeks again in the season. I one in particular toward the end of this month. Playing on Halloween on that Thursday. But, you know, from the Memphis game, there's still video we needed to show our young men to make corrections and to you know, show them things they did well, and then flip right to Temple as well. So it cuts down on the amount of time you have the game plan to review the game you just played. But, again, both programs are doing it, and, you know, you kind of packs everything together. Maybe it makes you focus a little bit more. I don't know. But there certainly are challenges losing that day of preparation. Absolutely it does. And again, if there are negatives, losing that day to be, I think, one of 2 or 3 games on national TV Friday night is a good trade-off for our program, you know, and certainly we're glad to be at home for this game. And again, I think given the choice, with certainly all due respect to the high school football games on Friday nights, if given the choice to be one of 2 or 3 games nationally televised, we would have played Sunday night. Mm-hmm.
What do you tell your guys to come back?
Well, you know, a couple things, and I mentioned this before. You know, one is I promise you Friday night we would like to score first, and I promise you Temple would like to score first. And I know, just because I'm good at math, either us or Temple will score first Friday night. So that team will get off to a fast start. What you've got to be careful of, in my opinion, is standing up in front of your student athletes and saying, hey, to win this game, we got to get off to a fast start. We talked about it as a staff last week going into Memphis. Let's try to get off to a fast start. We talked about it going into Central Florida, some things we wanted to do. And then we come out, and I think one of the first plays on offense, we throw an interception in scoring field position for Memphis on that game. So, you know, I feel like, and this is just everybody's philosophy is different, but had I stood up in front of all of our student athletes last week and say, hey, to beat Memphis, we have to get off to a fast start, and then that game would have started with us down 14-0, I would be concerned that young men on the sideline would say, well, Coach said we need to get off to a fast start to beat these guys, and we're behind 14-0, so there goes this game. So, we certainly want to execute on offense early in the game, earlier than we have been. We want to do the same. We want to stop them early in the game on defense. When you look at Temple and what they're doing so far this season, they start fast. I think they've scored 56 points in the first quarter of their first 5 games, and I think they've only given up 17 points in the first quarter of their first 5 games. So they are a team that has started fast. You know, again, when given the choice to start fast or finish fast, I did appreciate how our young men battled back and scored 28 points to offset what Memphis did there after they scored their first 14. So it's something we talk about as a staff. We try to script offensively and anticipate defensively what we're going to get early on, and we'd like nothing more than to start fast Friday night.
You talk about field position a lot. Temple leads the conference in punt return yards. You know, is that an extra added pressure this week in practice, looking at that tape? And
It is, and they've got a dynamic punt return. They've used a couple guys back there. They actually ran a punt back for a touchdown with punt safe with their defense on the field in one of their first games. So it's something we've talked again already to our young men about the importance of it this week on kickoff coverage and on punt. We've got to do a better job getting our return game going, and this would be a week to do that. They're very, very, very fast on their kickoff coverage unit, and it'll be a challenge for us, but it's something we've got to improve on. I thought we took steps forward in the previous 2 or 3 games, and I thought we took a step backwards against Memphis Saturday night in our return game.
And then on the flip side, on offense, I know it's been an issue now twice, major, leaving points on the field in the red zone. Is that something, I mean, Temple's got a pretty good red zone defense themselves. Is that something you guys are keying in extra hard these last few weeks?
Absolutely, and it's something, I mean, to me, that's situational football. You get down there, you need to score points. First and foremost, not turn it over. When you talk about getting down that close, we got in there close, we got backed up on a couple negative plays, and then we miss a field goal that we're accustomed to making. So, offensively, we got to get down there and score. We got down, I think, first and goal from the 5, and we had a miscommunication on first and goal, and lost, I think, 4 yards, and we can't go backwards once we get that close to the goal line.